Welcome. Good morning. What's the chemical formulation for hangover? Remedy. Do you have one? I know. B12. I know some of you were out partying last night because I was there. So it turns out New Orleans is not the only place vulnerable to hurricanes. Wall Street had a very windy, stormy January as far as biotech and pharma stocks go. Somewhere I've got some notes here. But the National Biotechnology Index, NBI, lost 25% so far this year. So we knew the good times wouldn't last forever. Is this just a blip? We're going to leave that up to CNBC to sort through. The truth is, it's never been a better time to be in life sciences. I'm Theral Timpson. I'm the host of Mendelspod, a podcast where I get to talk to thought leaders around the life science industry about whatever they want to talk about. And today we're going to talk about how opportunities in the life sciences, trends there, technologies that are driving the products, and how that might relate to you, to manufacturers of fine chemicals. So it is a strong industry. The NIH just got a $2 billion budget increase. It's the biggest since 2012. FDA is just approved 45 drugs last year, so that's up from 41 the year before. And so I think it hasn't been that high since the crazy days of the 90s. So that's good. And then the thing to see there actually is that biologics were a third of those drugs that were approved last year. That's up from a fourth of the 41 drugs approved in 2014. So what does this mean? We are joined today by a very diverse panel that I'm happy to present. Here on my left is Chandra Ramanathan of Bayer. He is the Senior Director of Innovation Strategy there. That's a bold title.
Yep.
You actually got to get something done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just tell me if you guys can't hear me. And to his left is Rick Mullen. He is a senior editor at Chemistry and Engineering News. Do we have some CNN News fans out here? Yeah, a couple. Devin Leake is Vice President of R&D and Operations at Gen 9. That's the spaceship that's going to be used to go up and terraform Mars. You've heard of? No, that's a synthetic biology company. And synthetic biology is a very exciting, growing space. And it is intersecting with biotech and pharma and fine chemicals. So, welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
We only have half an hour here to cover all of life sciences. So please talk really fast. No, go slow. We'll just chew off a few bites here. And then I want to go out to the audience for questions at the end, if there's any burning questions that come up. So let's start with Rick. If you were sitting down today to write an Outlook piece, 2016 Outlook for fine chemicals, Rick has covered the fine chemicals beat for many years. If you were writing an Outlook, what would be the gist of it?
Well, it turns out that's something that I wrote only a few days ago, so I can tell you exactly what it would be. I mean, we do an Outlook every year at the end of the year, and this year's headline, last year's headline is that optimism is no longer cautious. And this year is that it's like bordering on insane. I mean, everybody's doing very, very well. The companies that are in business and doing serious business are just astonished themselves at how well they're doing right now. So it's a very, very strong outlook. I don't think, I mean, you can almost get into real hyperbole when you're talking about it. And of course, that makes you wonder, historically, you know, this has been a cyclical industry like most. But there are a lot of changes going on in the market, in pharmaceuticals, that sustains growth. Nobody's afraid of what seems to be a blip in biotech stocks because there's venture capital. But there are changes in the needs of the companies that are served. There's changes in the chemistry and the new drugs being developed, and there are a lot of paths to growth. There's a lot of investment going in right now, and a lot of reorganization around incorporating more service into manufacturing. So it's a really vital time. And to quote Jim Bruno, who is kind of a consultant slash deity in this sector, you'd have to really screw up royally not to do fantastically well in 2016.
Okay, that gives us a sense of it. That's a nice place to be. By the way, you look like the deity somehow.
Yeah, right.
So, Chandra,
Yep.
where do you see the most innovation happening?
First, just to quote you, it's never a better time to be in the life science, and so we are not just talking about disease management, we are talking about cure. So most of the innovation that's happening is
Okay, how we doing back there?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. So how we can move from just disease management into something like cure for some of the incurable diseases of the past. So the biggest innovation happening is, or I will talk to you about external innovation and partnership. That is a big thing. It's going to change the way we do our research. Each and everyone in this audience is going to be a key part of everyone's success, company success, very much dependent. Second is, things are getting very personal. Personalized medicine, it's going to be a wave of the future. And third thing is big data. So we have so much data now, not just the life science company. If you take into account some of the digital company and partnering, what we can do is limitless.
Okay, so let's talk about your external innovation, external strategy. I know what that means is you're focused more and more on early stage R&D and discovery, closer to discovery, like in academia and that.
Absolutely.
So how does that impact the folks out here?
Okay.
How would that impact them?
Yeah, I think if you're in the audience and you're thinking about partnership with a company, depending upon what you do, you don't have to wait till things really mature to start talking with your partner. If you have a very good idea, which is in early stage, and a company might be moving the right direction, maybe it's a time you can start talking to them. So it's kind of like the partnership discussions are shifting earlier. That's one. And second is, the way you can contribute is, companies are leveraging more and more into crowdsourcing, open innovation type of models. If you have a technology or a platform that whatever you're doing for a core business that might benefit a company, you will see that you can address some of the company's challenges even without looking into a traditional licensing or a BD partnership.
Okay, so Devin, synthetic biology. Let's talk about that. I interviewed the CEO of, I interviewed the CEO of Gen 9 some time ago, and basically the story I got was that Gen 9 was going to make DNA and genes cheaper, faster, better by a significant scale, and in the idea that would enable kind of a new synthetic biology revolution, that it would embolden entrepreneurs to come up with products and do new things because the price of DNA was so much cheaper. So is that right?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, so how is it impacting fine chemicals and drug development?
Yep. So what we see at Gen 9, so we provide DNA and we synthesize DNA, as Darryl said. We've been doing this since 2012, and in the space of the fine chemicals, the trends that we've seen are companies that want to move away from petroleum-based products. So they want to move into something that's more sustainable, or they want to enable different features. So in the space of biopharmaceuticals or therapeutics, people want to explore areas that were previously inaccessible. These would be examples of antibiotics, so new types of antibiotics. So for those of you who are not familiar with the antibiotic space, these are typically derived from the environment with these large gene clusters called polyketide clusters. And so they're derived from different bacteria, et cetera, and which is great. But as you've heard, is we keep running out. We're developing antibiotics, but then the strains of bacteria become resistant to this, and so we need new forms of this. So one way, and again to Theryl's point, one way to do this is to actually explore new space, new sequence space. But these large polyketide clusters are in fact over 50,000 base pairs long. And so the typical DNA that's synthesized today is around 1,000 base pairs. So we need new tools that allow us to effectively explore this space. And so at Gen 9, for example, we've gone as far as 10,000 base pairs. We're moving towards 20,000 base pairs. We plan to be at 50,000 base pairs by next year. So we're exploring, or at least partnering with different researchers to explore this space.
Do you have partnerships with Big Pharma?
Big Pharma and large academic groups. So both are actually very much invested in this. Stanford is a great area. Maureen Hillenmeyer and is one of the kind of leading faculty members looking at these polyketide clusters. But large pharma are extremely interested in this.
Okay. Chandra, let's come back to you. I mentioned a third of the FDA approvals were biologics. So do you have any idea? In 2013, Humira became the top-selling drug in the world, and it was a biologic, first time in biologic. So I'm wondering, how is biologics eating? Are biologics eating up the small molecule business, or is it just an insurgence?
I think it's more of an insurgence, and you will continue to see the trend. I think if you take a step back and look at genomics, small molecules really help in kind of a tractable target. So a lot of drug targets that are amenable for small molecules, we are doing that, and that will continue. Main driver. People would like to take a pill, very convenient, it's there. But what is happening is with a lot of novel technologies, and also we talked about synthetics and things like that, gene editing and various things, biologics are going to go after a space that was not tractable for drug discovery in the past. It's opening up a new space. So if we thought Humira is a success, you're going to see more and more targets, and biologics are going to come and take the scene. So I would say that it's an insurgence, and it's going to be there for a very, very long time.
Okay, so it's new territory, just expanding
Exactly.
the overall pie. Small molecules are expanding.
Yep.
Rick, small molecules are expanding too?
I always like to make clear when I address anybody professionally that I'm not a scientist. I'm an English major and a business journalist. And as such, I'm always fascinated with the timidness and fear basic to the scientist's mind, which is, oh my God, biology, what's going to happen to chemistry?
Right.
Oh my God, biologics, is this the end of small molecules? Well, they'll actually create full sentences to defend themselves from something that needs absolutely no defense whatsoever. So small molecules are going to be a workhorse for a long time into the future. However, obviously the future is going to entail an awful lot of biologics, and a lot of biotech involves small molecule chemistry. Antibody drug conjugates have a small molecule component. But it's interesting to see that some of the more comprehensive service firms are investing in biologics. My colleague Ann Thayer has a very good story with a box on that in this week's Chemical and Engineering News, which make sure you get the right one. January 25th is going around. There are companies like Wuxi that are getting more involved in it, and there are companies such as Samsung that are involved, a lot of Asian companies. There are companies like Dishman, who are API manufacturers who have gotten into antibody drug conjugates and are working on both sides of it. But small molecule people will be needed, and will be working in partnerships, with folks that do antibody drug conjugates. One interesting thing, though, is that the trend in big pharma to move away from manufacturing is pretty much a small molecule trend. There are companies like AstraZeneca, and again, Ann covers
Okay,
this
yeah, that was
thoroughly.
my next question. The biologics are still being done by
Right, the large pharma companies, even Bristol Myers Squibb, who I don't consider the most cutting edge of the big pharma companies, is involved in biologics. So it's while there should be no fear of small molecules being taken over, you really, like Dishman, which has been working on this for years, you've got to be sort of a visionary and get started on developing that technology now, or developing a strategy where you'll participate with biotech firms.
Yeah.
I want to add, I could not agree with you more. I think there is a space for both. In a way, like Bayer, we are very proud of small molecules, and we have like a 150-year-old heritage. But I think in what we believe will make us more innovative is exactly as you said, like if we can combine a small molecule and antibody drug conjugate with biologics, so that kind of combination might put us at much more at an innovative edge than having a simple thinking like, hey, this is biologics, this is small molecule. The combination can be like
It's not a black and white.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we actually had somebody on the program, Rick, who was talking about chemists going extinct. And I can see here today they're not.
I'd love to see that, believe me.
But then recently we had actually a chemist on the program, and she said, no, it's all about chemistry, and even as biology now has the tools to get down into the molecular level, right, of the body, that it becomes chemistry again there.
Well, you know what
and
I
so
think
she
is a
says
metaphor?
she says the future of biology is a return to chemistry.
Well, the metaphor for me is in art. Drawing is basic to everything you do in art. It's basic to dance, it's basic to sculpture, it's basic to staging a play. Chemistry is the drawing, it's the basic science to anything you're going to be. I mean, the chemistry is just not good.
This is our New Yorker on the panel. So let's talk about external partnerships and the suppliers and vendors, Rick, doing more, becoming more diversified. How does a chemical supplier differentiate themselves today?
It's an interesting question, and it's a field in which there are a lot of options. But as they do that, we're seeing a lot more of sort of a herding toward even a one-stop shop. But what the suppliers here have been doing is specializing in chemistry, especially high potency, but also adding process development and going further downstream all the way to formulation services. If there's companies like Patheon, Wuxi, even Siegfried, which has made a very big move in buying the BASF assets in Europe, and Hovione, who have been steadily adding these services. One of the things that's also interesting, though, is that as these companies expand, being local to customers is very important. So, for example, companies that are doing high potency in Europe are now looking for a high potency plant in the U.S. I think there's going to be a lot of acquisition going forward, especially of assets. People are looking for assets in the U.S. right now. In Europe, a lot of the companies that do this are based in Europe to be closer to the customers. But differentiating yourself is a matter of chemistry and services, and there's a big mix and a trend toward very comprehensive both sides.
Okay.
But I guess maybe my question to that would be, do you feel like there's differentiation in the type of QC that's done? Because as downstream applications for these chemicals and for these raw materials have changed, it seems like the traditional QC standards have become obsolete or become less relevant, and new ones need to be developed.
Again, I'm going to pivot to my colleague Ann Fair's story this week.
Okay, can you say that again? They missed it on the mic.
I said, again, I'm going to pivot to Ann Thayer's story this week, which covers some of that. But yes, quality, just general, as the statistics become huge in everything, and especially in pharmaceuticals and manufacturing, quality concerns and QC are definitely an area of differentiation. And that has a lot to do with partnership, where the supplier is taking on a lot of the responsibility in that area. The partnerships are becoming much more comprehensive from the supplier side, because A, they're dealing with virtual companies on one side, and B, the downsizing in not only of manufacturing but also research and QC at the big pharma companies. So excellence at that is important, as is again a comprehensive serviceability.
I'm going to ask the audience if you've got any questions. Think them over. I'm going to ask another question, then I'll come back out to the audience. Devin, so environmental issues, sustainability is bigger and bigger issue in every industry.
Right.
So does synthetic biology offer something there?
Yeah, and so I think that's a real niche and differentiation for synthetic biology in this space. I think that it has been challenging at times with synthetic biology to promote the kind of sustainability and green aspect of it. A lot of what drives that is the overall cost of converting some of these chemicals and raw materials over to a more sustainable solution, and arguably in the environment, the price of oil really contributes a lot to that trend. But now we see, I think, a shift in the overall mindset. I think that's contributed, or it's a result of kind of the awareness of global warming, the awareness of some of our other more pressing issues, like disease-borne agents from vectors like mosquitoes. These are all things that make people more cognizant that we need better solutions, and I think that drives a lot of the synthetic biology research going on. A great company, Oxitec, that is owned by Intrexon, is working with Brazil to address the Zika virus. There's a company in Massachusetts called Aqua Bounty that is working to develop a new type of salmon that can be matured in a shorter period of time for food. And I know some of these, a lot of times researchers talk about the Janus effect. There's great benefit and there's great concern with a lot of these really revolutionary processes or technologies that are coming about. But in ways we have to embrace them. We have to really take these in and embrace and develop these to really move to the next step in our own technological evolution.
Okay, anybody here in the audience who's got a question for our panel about fine chemicals and the intersection with life sciences? Okay, let's go back to Chandra. So you talked about innovation and moving towards earlier stage R&D, and that chemical manufacturers should just get in touch sooner.
Yep.
Can you talk about some examples there?
Absolutely, yeah. So you can think about like 3 areas. One is open innovation. So basically, if you have some technology you might be using for your core business, that technology might be useful for some of your partners, pharma, biotech companies, for a different purpose. So if you look at for Bayer, if you go to grants for targets, grants for leads, and a lot of grants for programs, our competitors also have similar programs. If you look into it, and if your technology is going to have some value for these companies, you can apply right now. Most of them are no strings, no IP. It's basically funding to encourage very early partnership. So that is one way the companies can get more and more involved. The second one is more and more companies are coming out and asking for, hey, I have a problem in my synthesis. There's one step which is very inefficient. So instead of thinking of a partnership and things like that, they go and publish outside saying that, you know what, if there's a better chemist out there who can come up with a good solution, let's look for it. So there are a lot of crowdsourcing that's happening. Initially, whatever the pharma companies used to be shy about talking about the challenges outside, now they are more and more coming out. So if you are there, you can either see a particular challenge faced by a pharma, maybe your technology can help. That's one way for it to get involved. Second is, if you have a good idea, you can chip in, not as a product, but something which can benefit a pharma. Those two ways you can get involved from a pure fine chemical side. And if you're moving a little bit into like digital, I'm not sure how much this audience is. There's a huge improvement or an increase in terms of giving grants for digital, in the sense that not just for apps and things like that, but also if you have something in digital that can change the way we treat patients. We treat data analysis, or we do data analysis. So those are another area where if you're interested, there are more options available.
Okay, any questions? Lee.
You mentioned moving away from petroleum-based products into things that are more sustainable and have better features. Is that benefit more for the manufacturer to talk about their corporate responsibility, or how does that filter down to the actual end user of a product? If they're simply being prescribed something by a doctor, they don't necessarily care how it's getting manufactured.
Okay.
Where does that fall into the spectrum of benefits, promotion, marketing?
Okay, so the question is about the sustainability that Devin was talking about, and how is that more a manufacturer thing, or is that does that get delivered to the consumer, and would the consumer drive that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. When I've heard industry leaders talk about their motivation to move to kind of a greener or more sustainable solution, it is partially a manufacturing benefit. They're looking for the cost savings. I do think that there is a component that is in the kind of the mindset of the customer. The customer feels better about buying something or engaging in something that is greener or more sustainable. And I think that there are also tangible benefits for some applications that the customer may realize as well. In some cases, it may be better purity. In some cases, it may be less contaminants that are related to the purity. It could be maybe even new features or functions that come about because of that. There may be less waste that's produced. It may be more efficient in their system. It may be taking in some other feedstock or raw material that is deleterious to the environment as well. So there may be other benefits that are not associated with the product, but that are tangential to the actual company and process themselves. So I would say the answer that I would give is there are both, in fact.
So it really is going to depend on what the product is and who is the actual decision maker.
Yep.
Because if it's the end user making that choice, then promoting that directly to them. But of course, if it's something being prescribed, for example.
Yep. Yeah, so her comment was, it really is going to depend on the circumstance or the specific example of what the user is getting out of this and what the company is pursuing, and that's absolutely correct. In general, I mean, again, the industry leaders, I mean, this is not a big driver for them. I mean, from a monetary standpoint, from a financial standpoint. So I think that what you're seeing is you're seeing a lot of people step forward and really want to do better for the community and for the environment.
Okay, we got to leave it there. So we've run out of time. But just to recap, Rick, you're from New York. This decline of 25% in biotech and pharma stocks, that's just a weird stock fluke. The underlying forces in life sciences have never been better.
That's what people say to me, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we got to leave it there. That was a fascinating discussion, our 30-minute life science overview. I want to thank our terrific panelists, Chandra Ramanathan from Bayer, and Rick Mullen at CNN News, and Devin Leake from SynBio from Gen 9. So thank you very much for joining us.